You're listening to Inside Israel Today with Gil Hoffman on the Land of Israel Network.
Hello and welcome to Inside Israel Today on the Land of Israel Network on thelandofisrael.com on a beautiful Tuesday here in Jerusalem. But we're going to be taking you back now to last Tuesday. Yes, I did a show last Tuesday and then I went straight to start working on this week's show. I'm taking you behind the scenes in the swearing-in ceremony of the new mayor of Jerusalem, Moshe Lion. He last week became the mayor officially, and I went with the executive producer of Inside Israel Today, Mr. Ben Bresky, behind the scenes at the city council meeting. This is what was happening. I'm here on the 6th floor of City Hall here for the ceremony in which Moshe Lion will be sworn in as the new mayor of Jerusalem, replacing Nir Barkat. It is a festive ceremony here, though they don't seem to be giving us any food, which is a disappointment for me. This is not what a lot of Jerusalemites were hoping for. There were many candidates who ran in the race, but he emerged victorious, and we have to unite behind him, and so we are going to be seeing what he has to say, and I guess what the previous mayor Barkat has to say at this event over here. And Jerusalem has to hope that over the next 5 years that Moshe Lion will succeed in keeping Jerusalem a worldly city, and cleaning up our garbage, and in letting this be a place where secular religious Zionists, modern Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox all feel comfortable living, solving housing problems, and all the other myriad of problems that there are in the city. And good luck. He has taken upon himself a very hard job. He's someone who knows how to manage money, at least that much we know from his experience as an accountant and in the public sector, and in being the Director General of the Prime Minister's Office and the head of the Jerusalem Development Authority and the other various roles that he has had. Right now he's in the process of building a coalition. As we speak, he has not succeeded in that in any way yet. Building a coalition is one of the most important things that a politician has to prove that he can do. If he can't bring the politicians together, how is he going to bring the people together? But there is still time for him to do that, and Israelis don't tend to do things too far ahead of the deadline. I'm sitting here with the Jerusalem Post veteran correspondent, Greer Faye Cashman. Greer, what do you have to say about this ceremony in which we're coronating Moshe Lion as Jerusalem's mayor?
Well, don't forget that today is Tuesday, which is the third day of the week, and the mayor happens to be religious, and it says in the Bible, Parmaim ki tov. So,
which means twice as good on Tuesday.
Twice as good on Tuesday, which was the third day of creation, and the only time that God actually said twice that it was good. So that may be a very good symbol for him. The other good thing about him is that he was previously the head of the Jerusalem Development Authority. So it's not as if he's coming without the experience of developing the city. And last night he was at the opening ceremony of WeWork, where he said that he had many projects in mind. And Nir Barkat also said that he intends to keep his commitment to the development of Jerusalem. He didn't spell out what that was, but I would suspect that he's going to go into some more high-tech enterprises. He did say that his was the first startup company in Jerusalem at the end of the 1980s, when there was nothing like WeWork. So let's see what happens. He can't be any worse than Barkat. He can only be as good or better. So let's give him a chance.
He cannot be any worse than Barkat, says Greer Faye Cashman. She has been writing in Jerusalem for many, many years, and so she is the authority. We have here many dignitaries that have arrived here. Rami Levy, the owner of the supermarket chain, and an outgoing city council member. Eliezer Rauchberger, the head of the Degel Torah faction, which is the largest faction after Hitorut, the faction of Ofer Berkovich, who lost the election in the runoff race to Moshe Lion. We'll see how much power the ultra-Orthodox end up having in the coalition that Moshe Lion will be forming. Also saw here Fleur Hassan Nachum is a former deputy mayor briefly and who was a guest on Inside Israel Today in the past. That's the color over here.
See Aryeh Deri or Victor Lieberman, who were his chief sponsors. I'm surprised.
Aryeh Deri not being here when there's a security operation going on in the north, when Aryeh Deri is a member of the security cabinet, can be understood. Victor Lieberman, the political patron of Moshe Lion, it will be interesting to see if he makes a political appearance over here, in part because he's not the defense minister anymore, and he has no reason not to be here. We shall see. We've taken you behind the scenes at the first meeting of Moshe Lion as mayor of the Jerusalem City Council. That's it. Now he is officially the mayor. He now has to deal with, as he himself has said, the most complicated city in the world. And, he didn't make a very favorable impression on me when I met with him, but he's in charge now, and we as residents of this city have to hope that he's going to be a big success. He is an accountant who has been very successful as an accountant, and so at least we hope that he'll run the city's finances very well. And perhaps because there are so many people have such low expectations of him, are afraid he's going to give it to the ultra-Orthodox and everything, close down cultural institutions, and make the city a lot less pleasant and livable. Maybe any success that it'll have, we will really celebrate. It's very helpful as a politician to have low expectations. I want to talk about Nir Barkat, the outgoing mayor. Okay, a lot of people have critical things to say about him, how the last few years he really focused on his own political future in his shift to national politics, on him going back and forth on key issues. You could go back on the website of the Land of Israel Network and see my interview with him from a few weeks ago, where he talked about how terrible Mayor Moshe Lion would be, and then ended up endorsing him in the second round against Ofer Berkovich. So, there's plenty of critical things to say about Nir Barkat. But you know what? He ran the city for 10 years. And during that time, tourism, which is the lifeblood of the city, skyrocketed. We went from having 2 million tourists to 5 million tourists. That doesn't happen without the mayor taking the right steps to make it happen. Bringing in that bike race that annoyed a lot of people, it brought in a lot of people and gave favorable coverage. Having a Jerusalem marathon that would be a serious marathon really put on the map, although the incoming deputy mayor, Elisha Peleg, says that he really started that out decades ago, whatever. And having these car races, these kinds of things bring people into a city. The train lines that have started, as annoying as they were, did revitalize downtown Jerusalem and have the potential to do that to other neighborhoods in the city. And culturally, things are happening that weren't happening before in the Machane Yehuda market. And that's something also we have to be thankful for. There has been economic growth in the city, in part because Nir Barkat, as a businessman, knew how to attract companies to the city. And he also, even though putting garbage in front of the finance ministry doesn't seem like the way to get things done, he did succeed in bringing a lot more economic support from the national government to Jerusalem, and that definitely helps a lot too. There was an article yesterday about how there are fewer people leaving the city than there ever were before. There's still more people leaving than coming, but it used to be a much wider gap, so he's managed to decrease that gap. And that's important too. We're talking about secular people and religious Zionist people, not just ultra-Orthodox people that are coming to the city. And so all of that we have to be thankful for. Now, as it stands right now, while we are doing this show, Moshe Lion is trying to build a governing coalition. We're waiting to see whether Ofer Berkovich, the leader of the Hitorut party, is going to be part of his government, or whether Ofer Berkovich is going to be the opposition. And if that happens, then you're going to have a government of the mayor and his cronies and ultra-Orthodox, in which case there are a lot of people who are going to be very upset. And and Ofer Berkovich would lead those people who are upset. But if Ofer Berkovich ends up joining, then you'll have really all sectors of the city working together. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens. As we're speaking right now, only one party has joined the coalition of Moshe Lion so far, which is the Likud party, which not only joined the coalition, it joined in a merger together with the Jerusalem Shelanu, our Jerusalem party of Moshe Lion. Moshe Lion did something that no other mayor around, as far as I know, around the country did, which is to be elected mayor with no city council seats. There weren't enough people who voted for Lion to have anyone to work for him on the city council. And so instead now, with this merger, he'll have Elisha Peleg, the deputy mayor, the leader of the Likud in Jerusalem, working on his behalf and being his arm inside that city council. Now, Lion also has become a city council member by default. The rule, which I don't know if it's ever been used before, says that if you are a mayor who has no city council seats, then you automatically enter the city council. So instead of having 31 seats on the city council, we have 32, as long as Moshe Lion is the mayor. And Elisha Peleg is a fascinating person. He's a person who's been in and out of the city council for more than 20 years, maybe more than 30 years. He has built various places around the city, Teddy Stadium, Kraft Family Stadium, when he was in charge of the sports portfolio. He's someone who was injured in the Yom Kippur War fighting for Israel. And he is someone who's given of himself to this city for so many years without ever receiving a shekel in return. City council members are not salaried positions. Neither are most posts as deputy mayor. There are about 5 deputy mayors under Barkat. Only one of them gets to be the paid deputy mayor. And that is not a post that Elisha Peleg ever had, to be the paid deputy mayor. And he's not going to have it in this government either. It's either going to be Ofer Berkovich or Eliezer Rauchberger from the Degel HaTorah party. We're going to wait and see if that happens. Now, the post of deputy mayor has been in the news because in Haifa, there was a decision by Einat Kalish Rotem, the new mayor of Haifa, that her deputy mayor would be a fellow named Raja Zaatra. Raja Zaatra is an Arab activist who has said very nasty things about Israel and the Jewish people and Zionism. He's compared Zionism not only to racism, to Nazism. He's compared Israel to ISIS, and he has defended Hamas and Hezbollah. And so Netanyahu has said he does not want this person to be a deputy mayor. The prime minister can't stop him, and so they're trying to change the law now to permit the prime minister to stop this person from being the deputy mayor of Haifa. So look, never a dull moment in municipal politics. We were following municipal politics here on Inside Israel Today for months, and ladies and gentlemen, it is not over yet. The fun is going on, and we will keep you up to date. When we come back from the break, we will be talking about not municipal politics, not national politics, but geopolitical politics of Israel against the world. Stay with us.
To make war upon rebellion is messy and slow, says T.E. Lawrence, like eating soup with a knife. Now I admit, I find life messy, but I never seem to feel that it's slow. I'm Rav Mike Feuer, and this is The Jewish Story.
Join Rav Mike Feuer for the best Jewish history podcast. The Jewish Story on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.
And we're back here on Inside Israel Today on the Land of Israel Network, on thelandofisrael.com. We talked at the beginning of the show about municipal politics in Jerusalem and in Haifa, and now we're going to be talking about geopolitics. Look, we think that things are getting so much better for Israel around the world. You know, Netanyahu over the last few years has been welcomed, becoming around the world, becoming the first sitting prime minister to visit Latin America, the first sitting prime minister to visit Australia, has gone to Africa a couple times. He has been welcomed in pretty much every country in Europe. He had this wonderful reception in India where he was treated like a god, though I know they have a lot of gods there in India, so it's not that big a deal. He gets along very well with Putin, who he spoke with yesterday. There's a delegation of IDF officers that's going to Russia today to explain what's going on the northern border between Israel and Lebanon right now. Things are looking so good around the world, even in the Middle East. We saw how over the last month Netanyahu was welcomed in Oman, which now Netanyahu revealed yesterday will now allow Israeli flights to fly over their country. When he flew to Oman, he flew over Saudi Arabia. Imagine, you could fly over Saudi Arabia and Oman to India. It will definitely be a lot quicker. And El Al, the Israeli airline, is expanding around the world. They announced on Tuesday morning that they will be flying to Las Vegas coming up soon. That means that they will have flights direct from Israel, not only to New York and Toronto and Montreal, but also now to Boston, and where they have right now in Los Angeles and Miami, and they're adding San Francisco and Las Vegas. Wow. I guess there are enough Israeli gamblers to make that flight worth their gamble. I don't know. But this just shows how Israel is really opening up to the world. And we have this record year in tourism, more countries coming from around the world. We already, sitting here at the middle of December, we already passed a couple weeks ago the record amount of tourists coming into Israel. And we're waiting and seeing whether we're going to pass that magic number of 4 million people. So if things are so good, then I still have trouble explaining what happened at the United Nations this last weekend. Okay, so Israel, on the one hand, if you want to look at the bright side, had its most successful vote ever. They had a vote to condemn Hamas for firing rockets at Israelis, for firing incendiary kites, for digging terror tunnels in order to attack Israeli civilians. And you had 87 countries vote in favor of this resolution condemning Hamas, 57 vote against, and 33 abstain. But it did not pass because they decided that you need to have a 2/3 majority. The Palestinians did a trick inside the United Nations where, unlike pretty much every other vote, they voted that you would need a 2/3 majority in order to pass the condemnation on Hamas. And 74 countries agreed to needing that 2/3 majority, and 72 disagreed. So because of 2 votes, the vote of 87 to 57 to condemn Hamas didn't even count. Now, this is crazy because the Palestinian Authority is at war with Hamas. They did this parliamentary move to prevent their enemy, Hamas, from being condemned at the United Nations. But still, you would think there would be 2/3 of the countries in the world who would realize that firing rockets and incendiary kites at civilians is a bad thing. But no, I have in front of me the list of countries who voted in favor who voted against, and who abstained. And I'm shocked at some of these countries. And I'm starting with India. India, we in Israel are supposed to have wonderful relations right now with India. Modi came here. He walked barefoot with Netanyahu while drinking recycled water, taking advantage of Israeli innovation that can save tens of thousands of lives there in India. There were all kinds of agreements reached between the Israeli government and the Indian government. As we speak, Israeli companies are investing throughout India in various provinces. Israel has been investing in Indian public opinion, bringing young Indian leaders to this country, new members of parliament and parliamentary aides and political strategists and journalists. Israel's really making an effort to reach out to India. And the result is India doesn't even have the moral spine to vote that rocket fire on civilians is bad. I mean, I realize they have a huge Muslim population, but what does an abstention mean? You're abstaining about whether setting people in fields on fire is good or bad? Do you not understand? That vote, for me, was really shocking. And it's not the only country that surprised me. Look, the Philippines. The Philippines was a country that had enough of an understanding of the world back in 1947 that they voted for the UN partition plan that resulted in Israel becoming a state. They're very proud of it. And here, you abstain on whether firing rockets is something worthy of being condemned? Now, I mean, the Philippines has its own problems in the region, but don't you think that if countries around the Philippines were firing rockets at the Philippines, don't you think that the Philippines would realize that's not something that the world should be abstaining about? Maybe it should be, I don't know, stopping the rocket fire, or at least condemning the rocket fire. More abstaining countries. Let's just list them over here in the wall of shame here of the United Nations. Uganda, El Salvador, Angola, Afghanistan, Ecuador, Armenia, Ethiopia, Bhutan, Burkina Faso, Barbados. Come on, what has Israel ever done to Barbados? Ghana, Guyana-Bissau. Israel just saved lives in Guyana-Bissau from Ebola. This is the thanks we get. Grenada, Vanuatu. I thought Vanuatu was one of those little itty-bitty countries that votes with us on everything. Ivory Coast, Tonga, Tanzania, Trinidad and Tobago. Mongolia, second communist country in the world after China. East Timor, Nepal, Samoa, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, Sri Lanka, Philippines, Cameroon, Kenya, and Thailand. You know, you'd think there are so many workers from Thailand here in Israel. Don't you think any of them would come back and maybe teach the Thai government that firing rockets at the Thai people working in the fields in the Gaza periphery is a bad thing? This is just shameful. I'm less disturbed by the countries that voted against, because these are pretty much all Muslim countries that really have something against Israel. You have Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, the United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, Iran, Algeria, Botswana, Bolivia, Bahrain, Belarus, Bangladesh, Brunei, Djibouti, Gambia, South Africa, not surprising, the Maldives, Vietnam. Vietnam thinks rocket fire is a good thing. They're voting not to condemn for rocket fire. Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Turkey, Jordan. Thanks a lot, Jordan, who we have peace with. Kuwait, Laos, Lebanon. Okay, fine. You're in favor of rocket fire. That much we know. Libya, Mauritania, Mauritius, Mali, Mozambique, Malaysia, Egypt, Morocco. Wait, 1 second. Egypt hates Hamas. Hamas is part of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the enemy of the regime in Egypt. I think Egypt should have abstained at least. Morocco, Nigeria. Nigeria is a Christian evangelical country surrounded by Muslims. Nigeria is the country that is the third most support in the world for Donald Trump in the Pew study after the Philippines and Israel. Nigeria, what are you doing voting against this resolution, condemning rocket fire on Israeli civilians? Nicaragua, Namibia, Sudan, Somalia, Syria, Suriname, Sierra Leone, China, Senegal, Oman that just welcomed Netanyahu. I guess if the meeting went well, not well enough to get them to at least abstain. Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Cuba, where all these Jews are coming to visit Cuba as if they're like suddenly this friendly, wonderful, warm country. No, they're not. Congo, Kazakhstan, Qatar, Russia, who we're supposed to have these great relations with, thanks a lot, Tunisia and Yemen. Okay? Shame on all of you. Shame on all of you who voted against. Shame on all of you who abstained. I want to end by giving praise. If I'm condemning the countries that voted against, obviously the moral countries like the United States and Australia, who you'd expect voted in favor, okay, we can start taking that for granted. But there are countries on this list of countries that voted in favor. I want to tell you, I was really surprised by. 87 countries voting in favor proves that there is morality in the world. Ireland, ladies and gentlemen. Ireland, that's seen as the most anti-Israel government in Europe. Ireland that wants to have boycotts against the Israeli economy. At least they understand that rocket fire is bad. Ireland voted with Israel. Thank you very much, Ireland. Switzerland, a country that is not known around the world for being moral. A country that had their neutrality during the Holocaust and resulted in a lot of people dying. A country that for years has had policies that just condemn the good side and don't attack the bad side, that really facilitate terror. Switzerland voted with Israel. South American countries that we can't really take for granted, like Peru and Chile, voting with Israel. And you've got Portugal over here that doesn't have a very pro-Israel government over there. So I want to thank each and every one of these countries that voted with Israel. Sweden and Norway, can't take them for granted either. New Zealand, that doesn't have the most pro-Israel government in the world down there. So there is morality in the world. Thank you. But we still have a long way to go. Thank you for being with us here. Before I end the show, I just want to give praise to Danny Danon, the ambassador of Israel at the United Nations, who's had to put up with these countries. He knows the ambassadors of all these people, of these countries.
For those member states that rejected this resolution, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Your silence in the face of evil reveals your true colors. It tells us what side you are really on. A side that does not care for the lives of innocent Israelis and innocent Palestinians who have fallen victim to the terrorists of Hamas.
He watched the Indian ambassador abstain, and I'm sure was flabbergasted by that. He spent months and months lobbying to get this resolution passed. This was supposed to be his crowning achievement, and it passed, but doesn't end up taking effect because of that ridiculous 2/3 vote, which, by the way, Norway voted in favor of. So, in the end, that's got to be the most frustrating job in the world. And maybe dealing with that frustration is something that gives you training to be prime minister. It worked for Netanyahu. He endured the suffering of being the UN ambassador. He knows what it's like to have everybody around you hate you. And maybe that is an important stepping stone for someone to be prime minister and to have the patience and be able to put up with that kind of thing. So thank you for being with us here on Inside Israel Today, on the Land of Israel Network, on thelandofisrael.com. We'll be back next week with another exciting show from here in Jerusalem. Bye-bye.
The question is, why are the Jews there in the first place? The Jewish people have been yearning to return to their ancient homeland for a long time.
The Yishai Fleischer Show, the voice of a new generation of pro-Israel activists.
And there's only two kinds of minorities in the Middle East, armed or unarmed.
Inspiring minds to think differently.
That jihadism doesn't just attack Jews. It attacks Christians, and it mostly attacks Muslims.
Inspiration, spirituality, and politics.
So first and foremost, this country is here to defend Jewish people and to live in its ancestral homeland.
Listen to the Yishai Fleischer Show every week on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.